this big tip-off interview, we have a political analyst, basketball analyst, a man who does it all in both the spheres of politics and sports, Leonard Mbulle-Nziege. He's going to be breaking down issues of basketball in Africa, and specifically the BAL, the franchise model that's been proposed. Leonard, welcome to the big tip-off. How are you doing?
Good morning. Happy Easter. We're doing it. He is risen, so it's great that we're able to start off the great day with Jesus, as I just came back from church, and then talking about basketball, economics, politics. My forte, to say the least.
Yeah, man. How have you enjoyed the action on the court before we get to the serious stuff?
Oh, I mean, I flew in from Cape Town for this. This is the second year I'm coming to see the BAL for myself, with my two eyes. I was one of the first people alongside you in South Africa to cover the BAL from the start. Been a very big proponent, a very big fan of it, and I think the great things I've seen are that the league is growing, it's improving. You look at the first year, and it was just a startup space. It's a startup league, but then you can see that they were still trying to figure things out, and they still are. But then, in terms of the fan engagement, I'm seeing the demographic of fans. The past couple of years, the previous years, I'd walk in the arena and I know our South African basketball community is very small. So every other person you see, but now, it's getting smaller and smaller. So that means the crowd demographics are changing. You're seeing new people coming into the game, and then the old fans are still very committed to it. So they're consolidating their fan base, their old fan base, as well as growing new ones. The fan experience is really, really good. On the outreach side, you see that they're doing outreach in terms of media, the BAL for her, all of those are going on, the coaching clinics. So I think holistically it's good. And if just for South Africa, it's a great showcase because, as you know, administratively and on the core performances, it's not really great. But on the other hand, it's like, if you really want to push, the basketball growth agenda in Africa, you can't do it without South Africa. So I think that even though things aren't going so great on other aspects of our domestic basketball, it shows that we can still bring a lot to the table, which other markets which have a good basketball foundation can't. So it's a good introduction, I think.
All right. And do you think over the 5 to now going year 6 of existence, it's capturing the hearts and minds of Africans at large?
I wouldn't say at large, because there's still people who are oblivious to the Basketball Africa League, because I still have to call it the NBA Africa League when I'm telling people that it was the Basketball Africa, so it was the name, and that's part of it, why the NBA became associated, because it's a brand name, it's a global conglomerate, it's a global cultural icon, so it's nice to be attached to it. But then as time evolves, you would like that it should be understood as its own entity. Even though it is associated and owned by the NBA, you need it to have its own identity. But that being said, when people see it, it's not like, oh, are you at this? Oh, I'm talking to people like, yeah, I saw my friends on their my friends posted on their socials. So the engagement, the understanding that it exists, or even when I'm talking to people who have no interest in basketball, people who are residents in Pretoria, and they say, oh yes, I know that this thing happened last year. It's a big thing. Or even your Uber drivers. It's like, when is this thing happening again? How long is it happening? So, it's not never, it's really just the common individual, how much they're engaging with it, because a lot of the time we're just looking at, okay, what are social media influencers saying?
Yeah.
What are people who are in the game, how are they perceiving it? Meanwhile, having grown up overseas when I was in the US for a very long time, you have the sports attraction is because of the most basic person.
Yeah.
You can be a CEO and then you're talking with a handyman somewhere and you're talking about sports. You see sports memorabilia in their place, and then you just strike a conversation and life goes on. So we're getting there little by little, but I still think that a lot of things need to be done. Within the South African context, you see that it's only Gauteng, which is really embracing it, but that's something we'll get to about as time evolves. And then the rest of the continent, there's good Canal Plus and the other channels, they speak about it. There's buy-in when the teams, they bring in their fans. So we're getting there.
All right. And in your opinion, do you think maybe they're missing the mark, the BAL, by not making it player-centered in terms of their marketing and, pushing the likes of Jean-Jacques Boissy. He's going to be their MVP last year, bringing guys like Aliou Diarra, making them the faces of this brand, even though he's not here this year, but really centering the players and saying, if you want to see players like Boissy, players like Diarra, making them,
poster child.
Yeah, poster child, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tricky because we went through this, as people might know who I am. I've worked with UCT basketball for quite a long time, and we still have the successful Friday Night Lights showcase basketball pieces. And one of the things we understood is that we had to have face of the teams.
Yeah.
And they were essentially popular students who we can say, okay, you know what, this is who we are putting at the forefront. We're going to put out highlight reels of them. We're going to make people know that when you're coming to this game, this is the person who you should watch out for, and then you'll develop broader interest. On the other hand, though, I understand, and I don't think they're doing enough of that. And I think one of the reasons is because the rosters are also a bit shaky, because we don't really know who's playing on the team until the week itself.
Yeah.
Sometimes I speak with the other media people. It's like, oh, who's on the team? Who's on the team? We'll know when we get there.
Yeah.
So that's a byproduct of that, because it's kind of hard to market the players when you don't know who is going to be involved. I mean, we had the situation with the Rwandan team, where you had an individual like Quinn Cook, who could have really, really been, really good poster child, because it's somebody who's still fairly known in the basketball circles. But then what happened is what happened, and you have to move on from that. But I think there needs to be more domestic engagement done.
Yes.
They need to work with the domestic actors, and that's also when we're going to speak to the franchise model, because the stability of teams. When you have more stable teams involved in this, their marketing and their publicity, the public relations, they're going to have to give them guidelines as to, okay, how you are able to project this, because yes, the BAL does very well in identifying who's who, who's popular, who's hot, who are the young, who are the youth listening to, who do they align with. But in terms of the players, not enough is done, because we have a South African guy like Azobor. And he's a really, really good player. If you're in the private, if you've been with people in the private school setup, you know about him, St. Cynthians, but in Cape Town, they don't know about him. Derby, they don't know about him. Somebody who needs to be really, really, really projected. David Craig, he's 7'3". We never see that. We're missing that. We are missing that in South Africa. Put him in the forefront, make him do a little bit of tour, and people are going to be like, okay, I want to see who this person is. So they got to work on that. But I think that they are working with what they know, and then what is also easier for them to have access to, because time is finite, resources are finite, and then also, like you say, you're trying to see what is going to get the most fan engagement at the moment. So I hope with time they will be able to, but it's something that they do need to work on.
All right. You've just spoken about the franchising now. Yes, as mentioned it in the intro. Or maybe I see it as a thorny issue, because when Commissioner Adam Silver announced it, it was as if he's like, Africa is a state instead of a continent made up of 54 countries. And, there are going to be certain barriers you need to cross to get it over the line. What do you think about it, the idea of turning it into franchises? Of course, they've spoken about predictability, development, building infrastructure. But what, in your opinion, what do you think it will take to get this franchise model over the line?
First and foremost, it's about time.
It's
about time, because you look at the VL as a startup league, right? And I'm old enough to have remembered when the WNBA and the MLS, the newest leagues in the US, were established, and they struggled mightily in the beginning. But one of the things that prevented the league from collapsing was that you have a franchise model, rather than every time a new team coming in, a new team coming in. It was more not understanding how to, attract a fan base and all of that. But then they understood that, for example, with the MLS, that we can't adopt a relegation promotion model, because now how are we going to get investors to come in and be like, okay, I'm going to put in this amount of money for this amount of time. I know I've got to be patient, because this is something which is fairly new. But then how am I giving a guarantee that there's going to be a return on investment within a certain amount of time? because now there's a very big difference between being a lower tier and a top tier.
Yeah.
Likewise, with respect to Africa, it's great that we have inclusivity.
Yeah.
Right? It's beautiful to have a tournament where you have a team from Cabo Verde, you have another team from Tanzania, you have another team from Kenya, because just beyond the spectacle aspect, as Pan-Africanists, even though a lot of people might not ascribe to it, I believe that Africans need to work together across all domains. And having a game where it's Kenya versus, where you have the Kenyan team versus the South African team, where you have in the later stages a Moroccan team against a team from East Africa, the players get to know each other, and it really creates synergies which are beautiful for the continent and for the game overall. But at the same time, there's a business.
Yeah.
And stability, predictability, as well as gaining investor confidence are key to ensuring that this is not a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
We don't want to say 5 years from now, the BL was a great thing and now it just went away. Because inclusivity is good, but then it must be done in a way that you create you create room for the league to thrive. And we've seen in South Africa, we've spoken about this on a personal level, inclusivity has had a negative effect because now you bring everybody into the house, but not everybody in the house can contribute.
Yeah.
Now speaking to Africa not being a homogeneous entity, if you looked at subsequent interviews, one of your colleagues, Cindy Swat, she did something very, very succinct for Forbes magazine.
Yeah.
And speaking to Mark Taylor, the deputy commissioner, who also oversees the NBA Africa stuff.
Yeah.
They understand that the markets in Africa are very, very different, extremely different. And, we have to look at the kind of investors who you're probably going to get. Certain countries is going to be states.
Yeah.
It's going to be state-led projects because now in those countries, formal economy investment is emanating from the states, multinational corporations, a few African conglomerates, and then some local people here and there, right?
Yeah.
Most of those small market countries, they're going to have states that are coming in. And then you could also have the foreign investors. You have your equity, venture capitalists, and we see with Nairobi City, they're trying to do something as such. There was an idea with respect to Cape Town Tigers. It kind of fell through, where these people can be, putting together money, and then along the way, they're going to bring in more investors. Diaspora.
Yeah.
I think about countries like Ghana, Nigeria, where they have very large US-based diaspora.
Yeah.
They can buy into the idea and say, okay, you know what, we're going to do this because they don't only see this as a basketball project, but then building an ecosystem where you have real estate in terms of arenas, hospitality, and other mechanisms, broadcasting rights, merchandising, and so on and so forth. And then you get more developed economies like South Africa, Morocco, Egypt to a certain extent because their economy is still very tied with the military and the state, but nevertheless, they're big enough and they have sporting ecosystems which have attracted investment, which are professional, and where people exercise full time such that there can be buy-in. I mean, I look at South Africa and you have 3 sports which are fully professional, even with their challenges. Soccer, cricket, and rugby. And you can see that there's the infrastructure, there's the capacity, there are the institutions which have existed to be able to invest in these. So obviously it's not going to be the same from the state to state, from country to country. In a country like Rwanda, they look at investing in the NBA as a state project.
Yeah.
In the DRC, which is establishing very close relations with the US, and they're also trying to project themselves as, we're not this war-torn country, but this country will full of opportunity. They can see it as, okay, you know what, there's a way for us to, show, as we say in French, grandeur.
Yeah.
Morocco is doing the same. They're investing heavily in sports. In South Africa, it can be seen purely from an investment standpoint. Purely from an investment standpoint, where you get maybe one of the PSL teams that says, okay, you know what, we want to expand our reach. This basketball thing, we've seen what's going on in Pretoria. We can move on to it, Where some leader in Africa will say, hey, nobody knows about us, but I hear that this basketball thing is looking for somebody, and we have the leeway to be able to put in, certain millions of dollars into this and see where it takes us from. So, yeah.
All right. Culturally, basketball in Africa is also built around the same model as some European clubs, where you have your FC Barcelona having a soccer team, handball team, roller hockey team, and in Egypt, countries like Egypt, you find that Angola, you find that with your Petro de Luanda, where it's an institution.
Yeah.
Morocco, you find that with Fous Rabat and your AS Saleh of this world, and my question is, given that those are already established institutions, something has to make way for that, and won't it kill maybe basketball if you were to say now there's going to be just one franchise, whereas there are many ecosystems there.
Yeah, and it's something which I spoke about in the beginning. I mean, you can even see the correlation between the teams that are successful, that have been successful in the league, versus those who have just been one or two season wonders, right? It's the institutional teams which are able, the multi-sport teams, which have been able to do not the best, not only within this sport, within the BAL, but as you look at CAF Champions League, when you look at Continental Handball Championships, when you look at all of those sports, you always get the same people. Petro de Luanda, you always get Esperance de Tunis, Al Ali, Zamalek. Even here in Southern Africa, the team next door, Mozambique, Ferroviário de Maputo. Those are household names, because what happens is they're able to, the institutions, they've existed for generations, and they're able to not only work on their institutional, their long-standing structures. They're able to have a bit of financial power, but above all, they have broad-based fan engagement, which is able to propel, because even if you're a handball fan, you're like, oh, but the basketball team is playing. That's our identity. That's our team. You see it sometimes with the multi-sport teams that come here. They might not all be basketball fans, but they know that this is the club, and it's something which would be nice to encourage. For example, in South Africa, where it's when I tell people like I always tell people that the Pirates Chiefs rivalry is something. If I was still in academia, you do a sociological study about, okay, but how has this ingrained over time, how it's passed down generationally and really contributed to the sport, and so on and so forth. Blue Phones teams, Celtics, Sundowns, and all. That being said, I think that it reinforces the ability for the league to attract investors, because what happens is these are standout institutions, right? There's many multi-sport clubs, but there's always going to be teams that do better than others, which have better resources. And by bringing those clubs in, I think it also helps, because now what happens, I say, okay, there's a $50 million, we hear there's a $50 million franchise fee. But then what happens is, maybe you don't even need the $50 million with that Petro de Luanda or Zamalek, because they already have the organizational capacity. They already have the institutions. They have the academies. They have the junior teams. They already have a pipeline for top to bottom and bottom up development, and then there are just other little things that need to be put into place in order to bolster that. And then maybe as time evolves, because remember, this is just a start. It's not finality. This is not finality. You can still have in those countries multiple teams, because I believe, for example, in Egypt, if Al Ali or Zamalek, one of them gets the first franchise, they're rivals. They're going to say, why only them? Let's get our act in order. Same in Tunisia, this year's Club Africain. Esperance de Tunis is going to say the same thing. Wydad Casablanca, AS Rabat, Raja Casablanca, all of those teams in those different parts. And then it'll also expand to other parts of the continent, So I think that while it might seem exclusionary, and there are fears that, it could hurt the culture, I think that it needs to be treated carefully. That is true, that there needs to be careful steps taken, due diligence, proper engagement to ensure that, while we're doing this, we're not trying to water down what you're having, but what we're actually trying to use is your institutional capacity, your historical legacy, in order to bolster what we're trying to do, because we're still young, we know what we want to do, and then you coming on board is going to add value, and then also by you joining us, it also adds value to what you're doing.
All right. And you've just spoken about valuation, $50 million. It could either potentially bring in investors, or scare off for investors. But when you compare it to a sport like football, or maybe you look at a club like Manyehlisa Sundowns, that's almost its valuation, right? That $50 million. Do you think basketball is worth that much, or should the question be, I'm not sure what the question should be, is basketball worth that much, or should there be another question being asked about why the valuation is what it is?
Look, when you're trying to buy a house, what happens? they put up a price.
Yeah,
That's the valuation.
Yeah.
But what's the market? But at the end of the day, it's the market that determines what is actually available for them. Because the buyers, when the potential buyers, going to look at it and say, is this what I'm actually going to want? Right. So in that sense, it could actually surpass, but they're going to have to be flexible and tone it down.
Yeah.
We're going to see from what is going on, because even in the interviews, they say, hey, look, this is the price tag we put.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we understand that markets are different. You know, there are different stages of development. You have different kinds of investors. You have different levels of development in these countries which will warrant certain amounts of money.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, there's a country like, say, Senegal, right?
Yeah.
Senegal has one of the richest basketball cultures in the continent.
Yeah.
They bought into this league. They've been buying into continental basketball.
Yeah.
They have a very Pan-African and young president. They want to probably get involved in this, but they're also in a very, very deep, they're in a bad economic situation. Right now, to bring up 50 million, that would cause a bit of controversy, right? Likewise, in a country like Angola, basketball crazy country, but they're depending on oil. And the oil markets, okay, now there's going to be, with everything that's going on, the Middle East conflict, they're going to get a little bit of a revenue windfall. But on the other hand, in the long run, they have other structural issues.
Yeah.
There's a lot of political stuff that's going on. There are elections coming up. Are they going to really want to put all that money into it? Maybe they can put some. So there's got to be flexibility.
Yeah.
You look at the kind of investors, the kind of the people. You need to be realistic.
Yeah.
In South Africa, who are the people that was going to put up? It's not like we're not even talking about rugby and soccer. How much? I mean, even the biggest rugby purchases.
Yeah.
It's groups like Renbro that are putting in, but run by multi-billionaires. The Sharks. It's an American equity investment company that came into the fold. Western Cape Stormers. They wanted something as such, and then they scuttled it. In this country, which has the highest number of billionaires and high net worth people on the continent, you can just pick out a few people who might be able to. Likewise, on the rest of the continent, you might get somebody who has a prestige. You might look at it as a prestige project just to project who they are.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a need for flexibility, because, as you said, even the very highly valued entities, they're not as they don't have the same net worth as what you're getting with respect to this BA in the moment. And remember, it's a startup league.
Yeah.
So people need to look and say, you know what? I'm gonna think twice about this, even though it's NBA, looks cool.
Yeah.
There's room for growth, but am I willing to contribute this amount of money and not get any profit over the next 10 years?
Yeah. And one of the things is buy-in. You would think maybe there would be buy-in immediately from countries that you've mentioned, like Angola, which is a big basketball nation, Nigeria. Also, basketball is kind of popular there. Senegal, Morocco's, and Egypt. Why is maybe buy-in a bit slow from those countries?
I'm glad you didn't call the country which I come from, which I'm mentioned.
Oh, but Cameroon as well, man. Like you've produced.
We'll produce players.
No, but not yet the business.
Let's figure. There are other things we need to figure out.
All right.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I mean, I've spoken to the divergence of the landscapes where for example, in South Africa, it's formal investment in the formal sector is essentially led by local private sector.
Yeah.
You have foreign investors coming in here and there, and then but then in other countries, most countries, it's the state and MNCs that are leading the way.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of constraints, because where are those MNCs investing in? They're investing in in extractive sector. They're investing in high, immediate value. They're not there for the long term for the most part. It's the local people who are there for the long term because they're in it. I mean, at some point we could have hoped that our dear friends in the Gulf, the Qataris, the Saudis, and the Emiratis, because they're putting in a lot of money into Africa, and they're also putting money into sports. We could have we're seeing the Qatar Foundation as part of the BAL, which is nice. But then now with the crisis that's going on there, are they going to be willing to commit resources to a sports league in Africa? Meanwhile, they have to think about, we're trying to protect ourselves from not getting bombed, like we have for the past few weeks. So the buy-in really needs to come from the locals. Yeah. And that's why it's important that you have to have the local engagement, why there has to be flexibility, because there are local people who can put together money and say, hey, we like this, but then what did they say? Like I was speaking about, for example, Nigerian diaspora, right? Ghanaian diaspora and other diasporas, where they actually understand that this is something that has a lot of potential, and they put in, but then they can be a consortium of investors who bring in a few $1 million, right? And then you work with local people at the same hand. You're like, okay, you know what? This is, and we patch things together. At the end of the day, it's so important that you have to have the local input. Because that's what's not only is what's going to sustain the league in the short term, but they're going to be there in the long run to be able to make this thing grow into what the BAL and us as the basketball community on the continent wants. And like I said, it's unfortunate that, not unfortunate, the reality is that, and we see it with like AFCON, where countries invest millions, hundreds of millions into AFCON, not necessarily for a return on investment, but they see it as an element to, infuse some sort of development. I think that's an angle that needs to be sold in order to get people like states to get involved. And then now when the states do that, it creates the conditions where private people can come on board and say, okay, you know what, we're joining the stadium doing this, or we're going to really push all of this. So there's no single answer for this. The apprehension is evident, but then there's also room to reduce that apprehension, but then it will take a lot of engagement, and it will also, require us moving away from the traditional model of, how we attract investment, how we create opportunities, and so on and so forth.
All right. Just one question. I think you've spoken about it earlier in the conversation. Initially, Angola was touted as one of the hosts. Well, the BAL never officially said it. There were just rumors from other platforms that cover basketball, and that did not happen. Amadou Gallo, president of the BAL, said that there was a time factor and there was a delay. And Angola wasn't as responsive as they would have, BAL would have wanted them to be. Senegal was then touted, but clearly that didn't happen. And then they came to South Africa. My question is, why would a country like Angola, which is very basketball centered, or maybe a country like Senegal, also basketball centered, why would they not fall and trip all over themselves just to host? Because it's a very lucrative thing for the state, for the federation, or even Angola themselves.
I mean, we saw just recently how Angola hosted the masterfully the AfroBasket. The refereeing, that's talk for another day. But that's not Angola, that's on FIBA. That's on FIBA Africa. But then, it was the first time since I think AfroBasket 2009 that you had the hosting done in two cities. And the stadiums are always full. It was very, very competitive up until the finals. Everybody, and there was a lot of buy-in. But you have to remember, these are things that are organized. The federations don't have sufficient means to do this. The ministry, and by association, the presidency, have to have a lot of oversight over these kind of things. And if you're coming to them a few months ahead of time, maybe they've already organized budgets. They were protesting the country prior to that. There are a lot of political sensitivities where it's like, okay, we have cost of living issues, and then you're putting in money into a basketball tournament. We love basketball, but at the same time, there are other more pressing issues. I don't know the intricacies of why they were doing, but then, that's, and we spoke about this just off camera. In sports in Africa is driven primarily by the state. Even in countries, and even in countries where they are very successful in certain sports. I'll give you an example of Cameroon in football, one of the most successful countries in Africa. Even though there's a federation, the state has the responsibility for the most part to finance the activities, because now it's hard for a federation to pull out $10 million to finance a trip for AFCON. Likewise, something as it's not a small venture, because you have to have logistical stuff in there. You need to have the hotels. You need to be able to cater to VIPs. You need to all of that. And if you tell them within a very short space of time, it might not just be possible. So I think it's not a matter of desire. The basketball crazy nations, people I have colleagues in Senegal.
Yeah.
They always look forward to it.
What?
And Amadou Gal himself, he's Senegalese. His association, Seed Academy, has always been at the forefront. He's been personally advocating in Senegal for the BAL to be, for it to be the certain place of the BAL. So it had to be things related to logistics and administration rather than lack of political will and proper buy-in. But I think what needs to be done is, things just need to be done timely.
Yeah.
And the organization has smart people. They're led by basketball people.
Yeah.
And not only are they basketball people, they're people who are extremely smart. Very, very, very smart, and have worked at the highest echelons of basketball.
Yeah.
So I think maybe for them, maybe in the past they've been able to get very strong responses, but then things weren't as such this time around. They'll learn from it.
Yeah.
And hopefully next time we're going to be able to have more than just having South Africa. Even though, as I've said severally, South Africa is the backbone of this BAL.
Yeah.
For BAL to succeed, South Africa needs to continue to be punted as a market of choice. But then also that South Africa needs to get their domestic issues in.
Yeah.
And I'm saying domestic issues, I'm on camera. I will use different language off camera.
All right. Yeah. All right, man. Before we get to the issue of South Africa, the African psyche towards sports in general has often been one of it's a leisure thing rather than a thing of an activity of business where business can get involved. Well, in some parts of the continent.
Yeah.
What will it take, to shift that, and also, with organizations like the NBA being involved in Africa, FIBA itself trying to push the sport on the continent? What does it take to make sure that, hey, there's, money to be made, but it's a long game?
There's an aspirational, we have to promote the aspirational element of it. I mean, like I said, I've been growing up in the US and spending time in countries like France where, there are, a very strong culture of, I can be a professional athlete. Like it's something you say, I want to grow up to be. In contrast to we're here in South Africa or my home country, Cameroon, where you tell somebody that you want to be a professional athlete, they're just going to be like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Unless it's, for example, like rugby, cricket, soccer, where it's like, okay, there is a pathway for it. Entities like the BAL need to support, and I reiterate the word support, because at the end of the day, even though they're working with FIBA Africa, they cannot replace the roles of federations, districts, and departments of sports, because the responsibility is predominantly on them to create those frameworks, because the BAL is not going to come in when there's nothing and be like, okay, we're doing this because they're a corporate entity. They need to justify return on investment. They need to know that the money that they're putting into is going somewhere. It's not just going down a hole that nobody's going to be able to dig themselves out of. So we need to create pathways, and things like the NBA Academy. We started seeing two. Kamal Malwaj, who used to watch here, playing. He's an NBA now. He went through the academy, played BAL, went to Duke, and now he has an NBA career. Urish Chomsche, he was the same. We used to see him play down here. Went through the academy, BAL, then got drafted. I mean, he has a health condition at this point in time, but then he will be back. He will be back, and he will have a basketball career, and he will thrive. Likewise, we've seen Aliou Diarra. He started off a bit older, but nevertheless, he's been able to play now in EuroLeague, one of the top Italian clubs. He's somebody that we saw grow before our eyes. And, we need to just keep on having these programs. I like the BAL Elevate program, but it was kind of scattered. I guess maybe they said that there are things that they need to do. It's just not enough to give them the exposure to this. There's more development that needs to be involved with this. And we also have to take into account the gender aspect of it, because there's so many young ladies who play basketball, then along the way they move away from it because now they don't see the opportunities. I mean, if you watch the NCAA Final Four, you have on South Carolina,
Madina Alcott.
Exactly.
Yeah.
South Sudanese and a Kenyan sister doing their thing on one of the best basketball programs in the country. And we need to be able to demonstrate that, you playing this thing, it's cool and all, it keeps you healthy, keeps you out of trouble, keeps you focused, but then there is a lifelong pathway that can not only allow you to be a professional athlete, but go to great institutions. I mean, the head of BL operations, Leonard Mbulle-Nziege. I saw him when he was playing at Georgetown when I was a kid. Georgetown is one of the greatest universities in the U.S. He got a master's. He went to the NBA. He went back. He got a master's. He is an example, and he wasn't born in the U.S. He was born and raised in Yaoundé.
Yeah.
And that was before these opportunities emerged. So entities like the BAL, NBA Africa, the federations, they need to also work with the entities like the UN and all these other development agencies to be able to show that, back in Cameroon, we say people who are trying to become professional athletes are j'ai raté ma vie. I missed the mark.
Yeah.
I missed the mark. But we have to show that, no, these aren't people who missed the mark. These are people who actually have seen that there's an aspirational element to this. I can become an athlete, but I can also get education, and I can be forthright and productive to society, and even come back and help to propel that.
All right. Now, the hot potato. South African basketball.
Ta-da.
Basketball in South Africa. Man, it's well documented. The history is well known. And I'd just like to take you to the recent history. Cape Town Tigers investing in South Africa and its failure. I think you may have watched the broadcast we had with Peter Prinsloo, where he highlighted corruption as why it folded. What are we getting wrong before we touch on Cape Town Tigers?
What are we getting?
I mean, BIL is seeing the potential, everybody, but
Where do we start? I think what's interesting to note is that BL is successful in South Africa.
Yeah.
But then, who are the people who are the people who are involved with BL from South Africa aren't the usual suspects involved in the broader South African basketball landscape, be it BNL, be it the university landscape, be it the district level.
Yeah.
You'll get a few people here who are technical officials and all of that. But in terms of operations, in terms of marketing, in terms of the broader scheme of things, you're not going to see the people, even though it's in South Africa, the people who we're used to seeing in basketball, they're not the ones who are involved with the BAL here.
Yeah.
That should tell you something.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not the first time it happened. When there was the other very successful event, varsity basketball, which I was very highly involved with because when I was starting with UCT, we were the only institution that they came to for input and said, okay, wait, we see that you guys do things different. What goes on? And what was very interesting when the person who was running it came to us, he was a rugby person. He was from UJ. He had a very close relation with Francois Pinard. And one of the very interesting things he said is that, look, we reached out to the basketball community, but we did as much as possible to keep them away from the day-to-day operations. Now, if we continue to have a scenario where all of these high-level events, which are getting corporate sponsors, which are getting continental coverage because it's on Super Sport, so it's everybody's seeing it. I'm sitting in Cameroon or I'm in Namibia somewhere and I'm watching all of these things on the program. If these people who are trying to put in all these resources don't want to work with you continuously, not on a once-off basis, not on a twice-off basis, but then regularly, that is a very, 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 very big problem. So we have a reputational crisis across the board in terms of individuals, in terms of what we organize, in terms of the overall output, especially when they understand that even the regular sports person, they ask you, is there basketball in South Africa? But they know of basketball, the basketball courts everywhere, everywhere you go. I mean, I think about the fact that in my own country, and I'm sorry I always go back to this, but then these are the two places, my socialization is in the US, Cameroon, and South Africa. They're three different countries, very, very developed, one not so developed, and one that is a two-tier economy. We only had an indoor sports center of the caliber of what you get maybe at UP in 2009. When you go to townships, you still have indoor sports centers. The universities, the community halls, all of this infrastructure at the municipal level, in as much as municipalities are the weak link in overall governance, you still see basketball courts, you see all of these involved. So it is there. A very big problem is the leadership. There's a mindset that, we always talk about basketball was great in the 90s and the 2000s. I came to South Africa when it was on its last leg. But I can still see the potential. I remember the first USA that I attended in 2012. in PE. And UJ came with a bus. And I said to myself, wait a second. Nowhere else in Africa can you see that they're bringing 16 varsity teams to play over an extended period in this kind of landscape. Everybody had transfers. They look very, very organized. And I'm like, man, this has so much potential. But then over time, it has only gone from down to worse. And you ask yourselves, but you said 90s and 2000s, it was such a good landscape. But those people who brought it down are still the same people who are running things. And they're using a 90s and 2009 mindset to do things in the 2020s.
Yeah.
So that's one amongst many of the problems. Because even you look at the people who are involved in basketball, you're not seeing 20-year-olds, you're not seeing people in their 30s, it's still the older generation. And obviously this happens across all walks of life, whether it's politics, whether it's business. You must have people who are up and coming, people because they come in with fresh and new ideas. I always give the example of what I know. When we're involved with UCT, I don't have TikTok, I'm not great at social media. We have to reach out to the kids and say, hey, what's hot, what's not?
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that I thought was hot, it was not.
Yeah.
And that's how we're able to succeed because now they also know how to push things. And likewise, the NBA Africa, like I said, I really love that they're really pushing to get the kids there. You know, you can see that it's full, it's a Friday, they're all coming in their best and all of that. But why is that happening? Because they're getting different people. The people who are running the basketball landscape in the country are not the ones who are involved in making this an event a success. Get them in, get the nerds in, get the people who understand basketball from beyond, community clubs. Community clubs are good, but they can only get you so far.
Yeah.
Get the people who have done sports science. It's a thriving industry in the country. Get the people who have run away to basketball and netball.
Yeah.
Bring them back, send an olive branch.
Yeah.
Get the academics. Get the business people who. We have the head of MTN Group.
Yeah.
He's a basketball lover. He loves basketball. MTN Group is one of the biggest conglomerates in the continent. Why isn't he involved in the South African basketball landscape beyond St. John's tournament?
Yeah.
Why is it that you have South African companies like Standard Bank, which are MTN?
Yeah.
It's sponsoring basketball competitions across the country. South Africa, you only see St. John's tournament. Yeah. Standard Bank, biggest bank on the continent. It's sponsoring basketball in countries like South Sudan where they don't have an indoor arena. Yeah. South Africa, where do they end? It's private school tournaments.
Yeah.
We have to change this, and it's going to have to change through the leadership. I'm not saying that we have to get everybody out the way because at the end of the day, their experience and their knowledge counts, but then there's certain aspects of it that we need to do away with. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. There's a lot of other things. We can write a thesis, multiple theses, we can have documentaries and all of that, but then within this short little snippet, that is, I think, was the biggest thing that we need to look at. Why is it that the big events, the big and successful events, are not involving basketball people? Meanwhile, where basketball people are involved, everything collapses.
All right. You've said quite a mouthful on that issue, and one of the things I pick up from it is also being spoken about in parliamentary portfolios on sports, arts, and culture. And one of the issues highlighted was people are volunteers, people are don't have the competencies, maybe for lack of a better phrase, of being able to run a sports federation and making sure that it runs smoothly.
Yeah.
Of course, political oversight is important. It's very political as well, but at what point do we have to say, hey man, we need sports people? Yes, you are the political head, but sports people with sports qualifications have to be in to make sure that this organization runs at optimum level.
Yeah, like I said, South Africa's history is very unique. The majority were prevented from getting education and access to professional opportunities for the longest time, and it still happens. It still happens to today. So, a lot of the people who are volunteers, we credit them for their passion.
Yeah.
It's beautiful that they want to be committed to the game because it takes a lot for somebody to have a full-time occupation and say that, okay, I'm going to be involved in this. But that being said, we also understand that, you need to have a certain level of competency. And it's unfortunate that what we have is more of the people who have lack of that capacity, that competency, and they continue to push. And we've seen that especially with basketball at all levels. whether it's at the university level, and I'm not holding my tongue because I'm in the industry, but at the same time, I'm not getting my bread and butter from it. I've never gotten around from basketball. I've gotten lost money. I think all of us who are involved in the game in one way or the other.
Yeah, man. I can tell you, I could write you a book, man.
Yeah, I think all of us in one way or the other. We ask ourselves, why? You know, it's abused us in so many ways, but we still get into it. But that being said, on a serious note, you know, we really need to get ourselves, you know, because like I said, at every level, whether it's at the university, whether it's at the district level, whether it's at, you know, the only area where you can really see that the competency component is taken very seriously is at the private schools level.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that it's all our basketball people, the people who work with us. We know them. They have qualifications. They're smart, and we see how they successfully run those programs. Why? Because there's accountability. They have KPIs. They say, hey, if you don't do this, you're losing out on this.
Yeah.
You know, those are not people who are unfamiliar to us. They're all basketball people who are running those programs. Why can't those people be brought into that setup? They know the things. You know, they know it from a technical aspect, but they also understand it from an academic point of view. They also understand the business of it, and then there's above all a passion to it. And that's what aligns with the previous thing that I said, that it's the same people over and over and over again. And don't get it wrong, if you're a good person, you're always going to be solicited. But the thing is, you ask yourself, okay, why are the same people being solicited when they're never getting the results? I mean, you can say the same thing with coaching.
Yeah.
Not calling out any names, but you know what I mean. I've spoken about this. But that being said, we have to get out of this logic of having pity on people, especially the elders and all of that. We really need to bring in more of the brainiacs. And I said there's so many of them. There's so many basketball lovers. There's so many people who want the sport to thrive. There's so many people who you hear say, yeah, I was in high school, I played basketball, and then I didn't see anything afterwards. You know, you have very, very big institutions. All the big institutions in this country have basketball, you know, have basketball programs, and you have people who graduate from them who are doing excellent in life. Why are they not being called upon? You also have even overseas. We have a lot of South Africans who have been in overseas institutions. Maybe they're not playing, but then they've been able to get that perspective. If I'm not mistaken, I think the man's name is Peter Engelbelch or something, who works with the OKC Thunder. You have so many people who are involved in basketball across the board who would be willing to do that, right? And like I said, the volunteer aspect isn't great because, you know, when you're doing something that you're not paid for, which is not your profession, you can only give so much input. But then at the same time, it's like I said, we need to make sure that even the people who are volunteering are the right people.
All right. I want to go to a quote. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result.
Different result.
Or different result. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the same result is why you're insane.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for correcting me on that. Yeah. Giants are 0-4 as we speak right now.
Is it 0-5 or 1-4?
0-4.
And who are they playing today?
Petro de Luanda. Yeah. We've seen how they were founded, and the previous year, MBB, they qualified for the BAL, went through the road to bar process, didn't do so good. They bombed in the BAL as well. Cape Town Tigers, I think in my opinion, they were a smokescreen masking the deficiencies within South African basketball. Why are we not learning from that to say, okay, yes, Cape Town Tigers, kind of a good idea, put basketball on the map in South Africa. But now, I don't think they were just, as one social media commentator says, my team wasn't built for the BAL.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So why wasn't that, intentionality to want to invest in basketball in South Africa in a genuine way, making sure that, kids come up and it eventually failing, because of obviously of all the reported shady dealings.
So here's the thing, like I was a big supporter of Cape Town Tigers, which is unlike the case of most people in Cape Town. Most people in Cape Town shunned the thing, and it was, I think, there was definitely a significant amount of jealousy because it's like, okay, but wait a second, who are these American guys coming in, throwing in money, and now they're going to be going on the continental stage? Meanwhile, our teams have been, doing tooth and nail, no support. We've been in the communities, we've been in the trenches, and we've never had this kind of opportunity. So I think, as we say in urban contemporary jargon, they were salty about it. And there was a broader saltiness because, obviously the heart of basketball is Gauteng. And it's like, but who are these Cape Town Tigers people? Because the people who were involved, besides Mr. Vincent Tunja, a brother of ours, he was the most known figure. And then, they're bringing in these American guys. They're bringing calibers of players that South Africa has not produced. You guys have Billy Preston, you're getting Clear Anthony, you're getting all these guys.
Rafael Putney, Evans Ganapamos.
You're getting guys who have a lot of pedigree, and South Africa would find it hard with this current setup to produce. And it created interest, but at the same time, it was like, where's the local? Where's the local? Now you have MBB, Johannesburg Giants, and it's always interesting. It's kind of like the South African political family, where it's the ANC. ANC is the and then I look at broader basketball as the ANC, and then all these other things. Your MBB is like I'm not saying that is who they are, but it's like MBB is EFF, and then Giants is NK, and then whoever's gonna come up is gonna be PA. Everybody, it's all this, but it's all from the same family, and it's the same logic. None of these guys are diverting from there. They're all saying that this one does this one does it, but they all do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They all do the same thing. I think these guys need to do what is done in soccer, right? In soccer and American football. These leagues, normally takes about 30 years for a league to become very, very profitable.
Yeah.
But then you can speed up the process if now, for example, you have a couple teams, owners who come together and say, hey, you know what? Even though we're competitors, we have a common interest.
Yeah.
Our common interest is for basketball to be commercially viable, for our teams to thrive, and for us to be able to produce the best players so that wherever we're doing can be together. So, all the people, your Josie Nuggets person, your GHB, Andy from MBB, whoever, I don't know who's running the show in Cape Town now. Cape Town Tigers is better than God, but whoever is trying to do whatever they're doing in Cape Town, in Natal as well, because those need to be the centers.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, sports is economics.
Yeah.
Sports is economics. The only place here where that's not the case is if you have Free State Cheetahs or Bloemfontein Celtic, right? Where there's like just a deep-seated cultural attachment to those teams. Broadly speaking, in our sport, those need to be the centers.
Yeah.
So the big basketball players from there, the big basketball gurus from there, they need to come together and say, hey, okay, you know what? We're having a conclave. We're not leaving until we come up with, what? We're committed to we're committed to BNL, right?
Yeah.
Where all of us feeling our good teams and everything such that this league isn't going to die. They're going to be able to get a new broadcast partnership because Canal Plus will be tricky.
Yeah.
They're going to be tricky going forward. It's not the same way it used to be.
Yeah.
So you really have to show that you have something to bring to the table, right? All of them need to come together and say, okay, you know what? This is what we're doing in order for us, because now in doing that, it's going to create different models, different approaches, right? But then the different approaches now, there's a confluence and they're able to get positive results which have a broad-based impact, because what happens is everybody's doing their thing in a disparate manner. And I think that the Cape Town Tigers had a good idea. And that's why people initially bought into it, because they're looking at they're looking at the long term.
Yeah.
But the issue is that, and I reiterate, these teams are not supposed to substitute what the district, the provincial, as well as the national federation are doing.
Yeah.
And that was one of the issues at hand. Because you're not asking, nobody's here in Johannesburg Giants, nobody's asking Johannesburg Giants or MBB, why aren't you doing development? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? As soon as Cape Town Tigers came in, people were saying, but hey, your people aren't doing development, you're doing this. They are a private entity. They have corporate social responsibility elements that they have to adhere to, but they're not going to replace the district. They're not going to replace the Western Cape Province, but they're not going to replace BSA. And you can't just think that they come with American money and they come with Billy Preston and all these other guys and they're going to change things overnight. No, it's not a cash cow. This is not the UN. Even the UN doesn't give money like that. There's a decorum, there's a procedure, and people didn't want to do that. They didn't give them grace, and unfortunately, it fell apart. But then now the other teams are coming in. Nobody's asking any of those things.
For me, it's like, yeah, now they've seen what Takers did, and, it's more like a fashion thing rather than, a proper investment in basketball to make sure that, hey, we are not a one and done team.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Everybody's coming in. It's like, I want my time. I want my time. I want my time.
Yeah.
I want to get a little bit of shine. And that's where the aspirational element comes from. But the aspirational element needs to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is that, we have Johannesburg Giants. By the time we're getting to national championships next year, we're going to see what Johannesburg Pythons. Does it exist or something? I don't know. Where somebody from KZN is going to put in nice money, and then they're going to refurbish the Marlins. You're going to see Prinsloo there.
Yeah.
You're going to see David Craig there. You're going to see all the usual suspects. It's going to be just more, and it's going to be the same thing. People are going to be excited, and then they're going to get to this continental competition, and then they're going to get the smack reality hit out of them once more, and it's like, we're not there. We've not been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Why are we there for a long time? Because we keep doing the same thing over and over and over.
And expecting the same result. That's the a different result. You mean? Is it different? Whatever. Okay. Canal Plus. Yeah. That's another hot potato. Last question. The BNL could be in trouble if they don't do something drastic. And obviously, decisions are now being made in Paris, France, regarding content. We've seen what happened to Showmax, got shut down. BNL hasn't been a cash cow. What's your opinion on,
It's very funny. When the Canal Plus takeover was initially announced in 2024, it's because their parent company, Vivendi, it's around the Arc de Triomphe. Party. So I was walking past it and I sent a picture to a couple of people. I'm like, these are the people who are going to be controlling. These are the people who are going to be controlling your content very, very soon. Beautiful office there, but I was saying to myself, they are very strict. They are very, very strict. And one thing you have to understand is, I have been a subscriber of Canal Plus and consumer of it for close to 25 years. And the BAL is the only African basketball showcase that they have broadcasted. Even though they have markets, their big markets are Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, they've never done basketball showcases from there. The most they can do is profile pieces on players and showcase the players overseas, but they've never had an Africa-specific thing. South Africa basketball with the BNL. The BNL has been in trouble for a very long time. Since 2016, 2017. I think 2016 was the last year where there was some semblance of functionality for the league. And then the ladies' league came in for a couple years, and it had a verb because of a couple players. One of them is Cameroonian, as you know.
Yes, the doctor. Yes.
But nevertheless, I think that there is a lot of problems, and then for them to be able to regain some sort of, if they get, because that contract I believe still sustains the league, because they haven't been able to get investors on board. Because I know in the beginning people were interested. I want to have a franchise. I want to do this, but then you never hear that anymore. I mean, I'm in Cape Town. I don't know anything about the Western Cape Mountaineers. It's just there. It's just there, and I'm speaking.
Okay. I don't know. Okay. Go on.
Okay. And I'm in Cape Town, but there's not a real aspirational element to it. Nobody, initially, but now everybody's like, this one's a Western Cape Mountaineers. There's not even a prestige to it, And I'm sure it's even the same in the other provinces. So, you need to take hard decisions. We spoke about it earlier. Inclusivity doesn't mean the door is open to everybody, right? It's open to those who are qualified and they can add value to it. Yes, in the beginning, we wanted it to be, it was a state project. Where we want, a player from Zwide in Port Elizabeth to be able to have the same opportunity that somebody in Santon is going to have in terms of having access to basketball. But then the management hasn't followed up on that. DSAC took away the money. BSA is non-functional at this point in time. And now the last strand of financial support sports, it's not really in your hands anymore. It's really not in your hands because the people who were punting for it, pushing for it, the decisions aren't flowing through them anymore. So could it be the end? Could it be a time for reform?
Yeah.
Every challenge presents an opportunity. Is it up to you to take that opportunity, or are you going to leave it on the wayside?
Yeah, man. Finally, what would you hope the future is for South African basketball?
I was
South African basketball and African
I
basketball.
love South Africa, man. I love that's why I'm here. Yeah, I mean, against all odds, I'm still here because I love this, and then even with this basketball. Basketball has abused us in so many ways, but in other ways, it's helped to, on a personal note, it's really helped me to navigate my life here, from being here as a young adult to a full adult to a full career and everything. Allow me to travel and get new experiences and meet new people, and that should be some of the things that basketball is able to provide on so many levels. A child in Soweto should be able to know a child in Hedeveld because of basketball. The child in Hedeveld should be able to end up being friends with the child who went to St. John's, went to Kersney, or all these other schools because of basketball. I would have no business ending up in Mamelodi, but I'm there because of basketball. The people who I would not, and that's the beauty of the game. It brings so many people together, and this is a very young nation with a fractious history. But then basketball brings people together who would never have been together, and it creates understanding, it creates cohesion, and it brings, I don't want to say unity. Unity is they throw it out a lot, but it creates understanding between communities. But beyond that, it creates opportunities. You're in the media space. You are doing things in basketball. We have our big brother Quentin Denise, and he is the more or less voice of basketball in Africa, coming from South Africa. That's a beautiful thing. So many people are getting and will get opportunities as a result. They're able to sustain themselves, take care of their families, and basketball has that power. I'm not saying that people are going to get PSL level salaries or to live large like the rugby players, but basketball should be something where they say to themselves, yeah, you know what? I can do this beyond just the passion element of it. This is something that I can make a career out of. This is something I can get experience out of. This is something that can bring joy. This is something that can create development in terms of infrastructure, in terms of career opportunities, and so on and so forth. We have it in pockets here and there here. And like I said, South Africa is the country which has the best opportunity to demonstrate for the rest of the continent how to do that on a broad scale, because obviously you get Angola where it's interclub, Petro, but those are just like outliers. South Africa has the ability where in every province, you can have that center of excellence or those spheres of influence in terms of how basketball is developing. But it all stems from the leadership. It all stems from us, being able to reestablish that reputation which has been destroyed consistently and sustainably over the past 20 years. And also, like I said, working with our friends in NBA Africa, because they see the potential maybe even more than us. They're doing big things here. We're not involved in it, and that should be a wake-up call to us.
Leonard Mbulle-Nziege, thank you very much for your time, man. I appreciate it, and yes, let's hope for the best in South African basketball, and yes, till next time, thank you.
Thank you very much, and like I said, God bless South Africa, God bless Africa. The best players in the world are from here, so there's no point why we shouldn't be able to continuously put out a showcase and also have some of them come from South Africa. So let's keep it going, let's keep these conversations going, and hopefully the right people hear them and they get mad at us. That means they're probably saying the right thing. And then further, but hopefully they're able to learn from this and implement everything we're talking about.
Thank you.
All right.